we got some synchronization tools that you can sink your teeth into, just like that juicy burger there on the left. If you're a vegan, I apologize for that photo immensely. Sherry's choice was very tasteless. However, that does look very tasty. So anyways, two main synchronization quick keys that you're going to need to know. They're going to need to get your fingers to memorize, like playing the piano. Synchronize settings, which on your Mac is Command Shift and S together, on a Windows Control Shift and S, and match total exposure, which you may not have ever heard of before. We'll go through that in just a minute, but the quick key is Shift Option Command M. Holy smokes, that's a lot of buttons, but don't worry, it actually works out pretty well with the synchronize and then match together. So the Shift Option Command M or Control Alt Shift M. So at any time you can zip right back to the start of this video and have a look at those shortcut keys and get hungry while you're at it. The synchronization tools within Lightroom are absolutely incredible. I love them, and I've used them so much that my keyboard is actually worn out on the quick keys for synchronize and for match total exposure, these two that we're going to talk about right now. And you probably know about synchronize. Now, I'm a proponent very much of learning these shortcut keys with your fingers so that your left hand can be using those keys while your right hand is on the mouse or on your pen tablet so that you can edit more quickly. So the shortcut keys for the synchronize settings is Command Shift S. Now, this is probably one that you already know about, you've probably used before. Additionally, learning how to use these things properly and in order is a huge part of our process. And when you think about your images in parts, then you're able to use the synchronization features across your images and make adjustments very quickly and easily without degrading all the work that you already did. So if you synchronize all the exposures and you've already made adjustments, then it's not going to make you very happy. But if you deselect some of these things, it will make the adjustments you want. Let's say you made a change to the color grading, or you changed the saturation and vibrance of an image and you want to apply it across all of them. Well, you can do that right here. You can select them all and it's only going to change the settings for the saturation and vibrance. For the most speedy way to get through this balancing, to get your white balance and your exposure correct, there's two different synchronization quick keys and tools that you can use together, which are ridiculously awesome. So let's talk about those. Synchronized settings will make every one of the settings that you made on a particular image apply to another image. So let's say I've made a bunch of changes here. Actually, here's what we're going to do. We're going to take this image, we're going to reset it. All the changes that I've made to this particular picture right here, shot on the same camera as this one. If I want to synchronize the settings, what that's going to do, Command Shift S, if I select all of them and I synchronize, it is going to be the same image. It's going to make the same adjustments that I had previously. Okay, now that's awesome, especially when your exposure is perfect and you're an incredible photographer who never ever makes a mistake and every exposure is perfectly exposed to the light that you want on the subject's face. Unfortunately, like you, I'm not perfect. So I did this here, and you'll notice, oh hey, these guys are in the same exact spot, but this one I photographed with a different camera, and this one I photographed with my other camera, because I'm carrying two cameras. Well, guess what? I didn't make the adjustments here. So here's the shortfall of synchronization. If I select this image here, which I've already made adjustments to, and I go to this one, I can Command Shift S, synchronize settings, and it didn't change to the same brightness. Well, here's why. The exposure is set to 0 and white balance is as shot. Okay, so if my exposure or my white balance were off, it's not going to adjust those things. Now, here's where we enter what's called match total exposure. Okay, you will find match total exposure under Settings, match total exposures. I gotta select two. Settings, match total exposures. And there's a whole bunch of commands here by the M. Okay, this is actually Command, Shift, Option, M. So I use my thumb, my index finger, and my middle finger on Command, Option, and Shift. On the screen there is the PC code quick key. Sorry, I'm a Mac guy, so sorry you PC users. Great computers, just different keys. Match total exposure will calculate the amount of exposure, or calculate the brightness that is relative to your settings. So f2.8 at 400, whereas this one is f3.2 at 1/500. So different settings, but what it's going to do is it's going to calculate the difference between the two, and then it's going to match them. So you're matching the overall exposure. So if you've got a bunch of images that were shot in the same light, same location, and you know the exposure is the same on their faces or on your subject, it will match it. So watch this. I'm going to say Command, Option, Shift, M to match total exposure, and voila, it has now matched the exposure. Now here's a fine note. You'll see here that the white balance isn't the same. In fact, if we go to the develop settings, the white balance at 4950 and +3, this one's 5600 and +9. But hold on a second, we synchronize settings and we've matched the exposure. Why isn't my white balance the same? Well, that's because it's synchronizing as shot. So if I make a simple adjustment to the white balance that I like, which in this case is this one here, if I tap it up or down, if I make any adjustment, that changes white balance from as shot to custom. Okay, I've now made a change to this white balance. Even if I go right back to the same one, it's no longer as shot, it's now a custom temperature. So if I select all of these now, synchronize them, and say, oh no, they're all too bright, that looks absolutely terrible. Then I match the exposure. There we go. Now they are all exposed the same way, which, as I notice here, this one was shot in a brighter area. It was shot outside of the trees, so I'm going to have to bring that one back down a little bit to bring it to where it should be. So that was just a few clicks of the third stop down quick button. So when I'm working, when I'm balancing these images, I'm regularly using synchronize, match total exposure. In fact, during this process, that is a regular action. It's sync match, sync match, sync match. Even these ones here. Okay, so these weren't in the same brightness, but I know I want the same settings, so I'm going to synchronize, I'm going to match, I'm going to take those ones, and down we go. Now we have the brightness we want, and we have all of the other settings correct. So those two actions go together. Synchronize, match. A couple of notes. If you match and then synchronize, it's not going to work because you're going to synchronize the exposure settings. You can do it backwards if you match everything and then you synchronize and take out the exposure, then it'll work that way. But if you go synchronize, match in that order, it is clean. It works much cleaner. So use those two synchronization tools to your benefit, and the balancing portion will go beautifully for you. This is super duper awesome. Okay, something else to note in our synchronization tools is this new AI masking. So AI masking is the ability of Lightroom to be able to select a subject. And so it has selected this particular subject. Now you have to be very careful with it because it's very precise in its selection, and therefore the adjustments you make with it have to be very subtle. But it can be very, very useful to make subtle adjustments and changes to your subject, to the temperature, to well, basically all over the image, to be able to add a look to your images. I'm just playing around here a little bit. But what it's going to do is if you then synchronize, again here, we've got a new one here. I've got a mask. So if I want to synchronize just the mask, Lightroom is going to calculate who the subjects are on the other images, and it'll take a minute, but it will pull out who the subjects are, and it'll make that adjustment across those other images. So this is something else to note. Now, in our workflow and in this course, we teach to balance your images completely without using masks, and we treat masks as an additional local adjustment that we do later in the process. So note that the masks will synchronize across different images, but we are going to touch that much more deeply later in the course.